Hello and welcome to Your Therapist Said What? Today we have a trigger warning. Today we are talking about some things that can feel pretty intense and can be triggering to one's own trauma. So we just want to put that out there. Feel free to stop, pause the episode whenever you want if you're feeling yourself being triggered.
Our podcast is a place where we are desiring to honor the sacred process of therapy through the intermix of bringing in authentic relationships and conversation through the use of laughter and research.
Welcome to episode 10 of season 1. Today we continue to talk about sex. We will talk about trauma and sex, how it affects our body, sexual abuse, and also how to talk to your kids about sex.
Okay. Let's do this thing.
Are you excited, Nico?
I am. I love sex. I love trauma. And I love the body. So let's start out when we say, and Alex, maybe if you want to start, trauma, sex, and the body, what comes up for you?
What comes up for me, honestly, is a conversation I've had pretty frequently with a handful of clients regarding their trauma. And it's, I can never say it as eloquently as I say it in session, of course.
Preach.
But it's basically, sex is this wonderful thing that has been turned against you and basically turned into a weapon, a way to control you. And that's not been done by anything that you did or created or caused. That is 100% on the other person.
Yes. I love that. Sonia, what about for you? What comes up for you, or what comes to mind when we say trauma, sex, and the body?
First thing that comes to mind is sexual abuse when it comes to kids, and also the misconceptions that women are led to believe in regards to sex. That double standard. If a woman does it, she's a slut. If a man does it, it's cool. So I think even that could be very traumatizing, and it can intervene in the the enjoyment of having sex and having a sexual relationship with people. I try to talk about that bias with my girls, and hopefully little by little start changing the belief system that men can and women can't.
Yep. I love that. I think for me, trauma, sex, and the body, when we say that in that form, I think I just feel grief. Alex, I think like with you, it's felt like it's been coming up constantly in the last 6 to 9 months in my practice. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there's just so much shame around it. And again, and I think parts of that is what we as humans put on it. Like Sonia, like you're saying, I think there is this stupid stipulation like, oh, I can do it and I'm just a playboy and it's fine. But you do it and you're a slut and we need to get you out of here. Right? Like, I think parts of it are that. I think parts of it are the fact that as we grow up as children, it feels awkward for our parents to talk about. So no one talks about it. Or a lot of people don't talk about it, right? And so then we grow up and we're like, oh, I can't talk about my penis. I can't talk about my vagina. And we hold it and we're like, okay, I have to guard this because it's an awkward subject. We don't talk about it, right? And so there just feels like there's shame and grief around it. So I think when we say trauma, sex, and the body, I just get kind of sad.
Okay, so good and sad. When you say that, Nico, I remember. So as both of you know, I did not finish my my work and I didn't get my degree until I was an older adult. So my younger children did not have the privilege of my openness. And when I speak to my youngest daughter about sex and I'm so open, my younger children are like, really, Mom? But it feels very freeing. It feels it was very uncomfortable at first to start talking more about this subject with them, but it's very freeing to make that change. And once you make that change, you don't go back, and like you said, just recently, I don't know why my teenagers have been talking about, the kids that I work with, sex and relationships and the confusion. And I see so many things developing now, like codependency issues and misconceptions about sex. I don't know if I mentioned this, but one thing, maybe I did in the last podcast, but I learned what a smash and pass is. You know what a smash and pass is, I don't know. right? I did tell you.
I forgot.
I learned all these things, from these kids.
Smash
and
it, then pass it.
Boy, like smash it. Pass.
Yes.
Oh, she's mad at me because she thought that I said that she was going to be a smash and pass. I'm like, what the hell is that? But anyway, so yeah, I think it's really important to talk to your kids about sex and to be very open. Where do we want to start?
Well, what came up for me is if we could start how we're seeing it the most often, right? So right now, in my practice, I am seeing a lot of specifically men, but men and women, who are struggling with, I just keep watching porn and I don't want to, right? And in my practice, the bias that I hold is that it is not bad unless it's affecting you and you want it to be done, right? If you don't want to do it and you can't stop, then we can talk about it. But other than that, we don't have an opinion about it, right? Like, you do you. And I think what I'm seeing is people are like, well, I just keep looking at this. And so one of my favorite things to do in practice is to dive into, okay, what are you specifically looking at, right? And what do you start to feel in your body as you look at that? Because I think in my bias is that points to what you're most wanting in life, right? And what I'm seeing with that is that all these, what my clients are looking for is connection without the fear of getting hurt, right? And so their body feels too scared to connect. And so they find ways to do it where they're not going to get hurt. And then my wondering out of that comes of like, okay, how then can you show up with your spouse and have sex and wanting it to be intimate, or your partner and wanting it to be this close connection thing, which it can be, but you can't have that if you're so scared of getting hurt, right? And so how do we work with them?
Nico, I want to ask you something. And the reason I'm asking you specifically is because I know your background. Yeah. We're talking about porn, right? Yeah. And there is no judgment and no shaming on that.
Yeah.
I don't mean to trigger you, okay?
No, go.
Porn.
I talk about this all day at work, so you're not going to trigger me.
Porn and religion, porn and spirituality, porn and Christianity, all right? If you talk about porn, it is a very skewed view of a real sexual relationship. It is something that I think can go off into something that is not as healthy. When we talk, and if you were to go and speak to a counselor at church, or if you talk to someone, they're going to be like, oh no, you're going to have, demons attack you and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying that it's right. And I'm not saying that it's wrong, but how do you balance that? I want to believe that you're still going to hold that sacred place of sexuality between a man and a woman, and it's special. And I guess I struggle with this myself when, as being a therapist, I start becoming more and more open to these situations. And there's an internal struggle with my personal spiritual belief and allowing people to say, yeah, go crazy with porn. That's on you. Can you tell me a little bit more as a man and with a Christian background?
Yeah. Well, as someone who was in that position of like, I'm watching porn constantly and I don't want to be. Right. And then having to integrate that with my own spirituality and my upbringing is, if I go, do y'all know how I coped with COVID this year?
No.
Okay.
Dairy Queen.
Traveled?
Dairy Queen. Nope. Dairy Queen. Right. Like Dairy Queen was my coping strategy. Right. And I say that jokingly, but I mean it. Right. When my parents went through a divorce, I gained so much. Like, I was literally like a bubble boy. Right. And that's the way that I found to be safe. Right. If I can eat, I can control what's coming into my body. I can control what's happening. Okay. If so like a lot of the faith traditions is a lot of the evangelical Christian church community, which is the church community that I was a part of, no longer, but was a part of, is we were made for connection. Okay, so we say that, and we say connection is so good. Okay, what if connection isn't safe to me, right? Whether it's physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, whether it's just not abuse, and it's just, hey, I was taught that these people I can't rely on them. So relationship isn't safe, okay? So we would say that's a wound, but I still have the need to connect. So how do I connect with the wound, right? Just like, okay, Nico typically can cope with stress, right? I can do some deep breathing, I can do some yoga, I can do some therapy, and that's how I cope. Okay, well, parts of that were removed when COVID hit. Okay, so I still have the need to cope, So how am I going to do it? For me, I go to eating because it's something I can control, right? Porn is that same thing for a lot of people. Not all people. For a lot of people, it's just a way that they have learned to cope. And by us standing up and saying, and again, this is my bias, by us standing up and saying porn is bad, it immediately creates shame in the other person, and which is the opposite of connection. Right? So my bias and my practice is, look at all the porn you fucking want. I don't care. As long as you and I can connect.
Okay.
And what we see is when they start to connect with me or their partners or their friends, the porn use goes down automatically.
Okay.
Right?
So
because
acknowledging it and working, letting them be present and be real with what's going on rather than shaming them. And then as things start coming into place, it kind of diminishes. And
we make it really real. And I don't know why I asked that. I'm going to tell you. The one thing I bring up with a lot of people, when clients hold similar backgrounds of what I grew up in, I tend to use the story in the Bible of the adulterous woman. Okay. What does Jesus do in that story? People who want to take the scripture literally, what does Jesus do in that scripture, right? He says, he comes to her, he connects with her, he sees her, he says, you're important to me, and says, just don't do it.
Okay.
Right? However, then we allow the white, I'm showing all my biases today. We show the white old pastor saying, no, we don't do that. She's a slut. Da 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 da. Actually, no. Right? Like, that's not true. And so, does that make sense?
Alex, you answer that.
I'm struggling to see how you connect scripture to the pastor.
Yes. So I don't think that scripture talks about porn. Okay. It talks about sexual immorality.
It talks about masturbation. Okay.
That's no, it doesn't talk about masturbation. It says don't let your seed fall on unfertile ground, which people have taken to be sexual.
Okay.
And, right? That's a bias that we read into it. And so if we take scripture and we allow ourselves to imagine what it is, it doesn't actually talk about it. We have said that it talks about it, but that language is not found anywhere in the canonized scripture, right?
Well, and they've distorted it too to meet their own needs of the time, and it's just kind of stuck around. I mean, if we're not going to take and put any sort of sexual connotation onto it, that could very simply mean, don't waste your time with stuff. If you don't enjoy going to the park, then don't go to the park.
Yes.
You don't like your job. Okay, find a new job.
Yes.
Don't waste your time or your energy.
What was that?
There's the train.
No, I don't. I have 94 behind me. Oh. That was a semi nearly running over a car.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah. So sorry, guys.
So I think how I connect the two is we have to look at, okay. Yeah, that was a really big jump. How I connect the two, right? How I connect the pastor, the theology, and the trauma or the body is that we have to ask ourselves, where does this message come from? Okay. Where did the message of women are sluts if they sleep around come from? Where did masturbation is wrong come from? Right? We have to trace it. And oftentimes, one thing that I like to point to, just because it's one thing I studied, was, I might get this wrong, so if I did, let me know. Saint Augustine, or someone in one of the large players in
Augustine.
I think it was Augustine. I don't know. Someone. I think it was Augustine, actually. Had this idea that we need to scrub the ick off our skin, right? Like physically, like we need to scrub it because we are so dirty. Well, where did we start seeing ourselves as dirty and not beautiful?
Black Plague.
Right? So like, but actually, can we look at where these things start? Can we look at where the black and white rules started? Because my bias is that Jesus wasn't black and white. Jesus was like, hey, let's explore. And if you don't want to fall in the pit, then here's your map around the pit. But if you fall in the pit, I'll help you.
When did the shame start? Wasn't it when Eve ate the apple? I mean, that's when she noticed.
That's one interpretation of it.
Okay.
That's right. That's the interpretation, again, primarily that the evangelical church.
But then that comes from, that's a religious, foundation. Where does that come from? I think, and putting religion aside, I just think it's all about power. I think it's all about power.
That's exactly where it is. No, that's exactly where it is the blame automatically gets put on Eve, automatically gets put on the woman. This is your fault.
Yes.
And that's the original narrative that's been passed on to us. And that's why it's not the guy's responsibility not to rape someone. It's the girl's responsibility to dress appropriately. Yes. When we're sitting here, all us women know for a simple fact, we could be wearing a snowsuit and all you can see is our eyes because we're in Minnesota and it's fucking cold. And yes, exactly. And you can still get raped. I mean, that's just the reality of it. And to boot, I had seen this, and I know I'm going to butcher it again, unfortunately. But it was a very lovely thing. Don't tell me to go cover up so I don't become a victim. That just means someone else is going to become a victim instead of me. That's not okay. Turn that narrative around and say, hey, knock it off. It's not our responsibility. It's the guy's responsibility to actually shape up and follow social norms of don't do harm.
But
okay,
I think it's even deeper than that, though.
Yes.
And that's what I'm seeing in our practice, right? That's what, and again, that's what we as therapists see all the time is, I don't know if it is about social norms. I think it's deeper than that. And it's about figuring out where in yourself, what is happening in you that leads you to think that you can take power over someone else, right? What is happening in you that allows you to believe that you get to take what you want or take what you need versus asking for it?
Okay.
Entitlements is one thing that I've seen.
I'm sorry, what was that, Alex?
Entitlements is one thing that I've seen. And I think jumping back to the original part of it in the porn, I think that's where the porn is unhealthy, is when you start having these unrealistic expectations of what sex looks like and of what the relationship looks like. Because porn is a fantasy.
Where does entitlement come from?
I haven't gotten that far in life to figure that out entirely. I think part of it is how the child is raised. Part of it does appear to be societal patterns. And beyond that, I'm still trying to figure it out, honestly.
And I think those are the questions that rather than saying it's this way or it's this way, I think we have to learn to take that judgment and turn it into curiosity. Right? Of, okay, I understand that. I'm thinking it comes from entitlement, which I would probably agree with. And then my question becomes, where does the entitlement come from? Right? Is it that you were raised where you didn't get the attention you needed? So one of your coping strategies, your trauma survival strategies, were to just take what you need, right? Because no one's going to give it to you, so you might as well just take it.
And Nico, with girls that I've seen this dynamic and play out in many families where there's single moms that use their sexuality to get what they want. If you have a girl, a child, a young female, it's more prevalent in females that does not have a strong father figure present. And then they have a mother that is trying to make ends meet and knows that her sexuality can get her things and favors. And they're seeing that being played out. I have seen this and heard this over and over and over again. Dad's not present. Mom is doing her thing, trying to get things done with her sexuality. So what does the child do? The child learns in order to get the needs that what I need, not only physically, but emotionally, I use my sexuality. And then we have girls going to their sexuality and using it in a very dysfunctional way at a very early age because they're seeing parents do this. So it's not always, the power is not always put on men. Women always also use their sexual power, Now, I mean, it's a circle. It can go round and round and round because men that know that there is a woman in a vulnerable position, rather than saying, hey, I'm going to help you. You need to buy, you need money for food for your family. You need this, you need that. Let me help you. You don't have to do a sexual favor for me. Yeah. This is something that I see with families that is kind of quiet. I mean, you don't see it out in the open. But let me tell you guys, when I've gone to other countries to do the work that I do in other countries, oh my God, men pounce on those opportunities. Men pounce, you know, we're so lucky as women to be in the United States where we can move forward and develop ourselves and be able to pay our own bills. But in other countries, this is not the case for women. And men take advantage of that. Go ahead, Nico.
So the question or the thought I want to pose is then, as a society, what do we try to do to stop that? Right? We try to create these rules and these systems, right? We have a broken system, and then our idea to fix it is to create another system to try to stop that.
Okay, so let me tell you what I've seen. Okay,
yep.
So I'll try and be brief with this. So when I go to other countries, I've seen laws, right, that do not help. Laws that favor the power of a man over a woman. For example, in Colombia, a 14-year-old child can say that they have sex with a man of any age, anyone older, and it's consensual, and it's no longer a crime. It's no longer something that a man will get, you know, arrested for. So you see that happen a lot. You even see families utilizing their younger girls to get, you know, with someone that has money, and then they support the family, blah, blah, blah. So that's that. I mean, I've been to another small town in Mexico that's the same thing. Women use their bodies, they prostitute themselves, and it's so common that a man knows, you know, such and such woman is by herself with her kids, and if I tap into that, she's going to give it up, you know, she's going to give it up, which I think sucks. But even as I talk to these women, even if I say, okay, these laws are in place to not help you, it goes deeper than that. It is that transgenerational trauma that has been passed down generation to generation. So even if we come into the United States, even if these families immigrate into the US and they have the opportunity to stop these practices, it's so embedded in their lifestyle that they cannot. So we can say we're going to change laws, we're going to change this, which is very helpful, right? However, the real work and the real change does not come until you start breaking those intergenerational cycles of trauma.
Yes. And that's where, right, we can't just create another system to fix the system. It doesn't work, right? It can help, it can assist, but it doesn't fix it. So when we ask, why is it still going on? Because that's the Band-Aid, right? Yes. That's the porn is bad, let's block it, right? Is the law.
But it goes so much further. It goes so much
exactly.
Deeper. Okay.
And I think that's what we're here to talk about. Is what is the deeper? What do we do other than changing, right? Like, fine, yes, let's change the laws, let's block porn, let's do all this stuff. Let's put the Band-Aid on. But we also have to scrape and clean the wound first. And so how do we do that in therapy? And so I think that's
kind of different. What it looks like, where it's at, the intensity, it's different. Everyone has
where do you guys start? If someone comes into your practice and says, hey, like for me, this week it was, hey, I can't keep up in an erection when I'm having sex with my girlfriend. Okay, so that's what we talked about. So take something that you've seen in your practice that involves trauma, sex, and body, and tell us kind of where you would start and where you would go with that client. And again, obviously it's different per client, but what's your like general stance where you start?
You take that one, Alex.
Okay, so it's very different based on what the client presents to us. You know, each person is different, each trauma is different, each reaction is different. So a couple different approaches. But I guess the overall theme for all of my approaches consistently is learning to trust yourself. Yes, and learning that you are there for yourself. You have all the abilities, all the power to take care of yourself. And, you know, it's building that confidence partially to be able to know that and acknowledge that. And part of that is learning, okay, well, let's have safety, looking at the various safety aspects of maybe it's for a child. Okay, well, let's not talk to strangers. Do you know them? Do you know their name? Okay. And, learning kind of looks like a target. So your inner circle, which is your family, your kind of more immediate outer circle is your close friends where, you know, you go over to their house, they come over to your house, you guys are playing. Outside of that is your acquaintances where you know each other's names, but you don't hang out. Maybe you play with each other at recess because there's nothing else to do, but you guys don't hang out outside of school. Then outside of that are people that are familiar faces, but you've never talked to them, you don't know their names, you know, stuff like that. And teaching them basically that first to learn the safety. And then while we're doing that, also these personal bubbles. Yes. And learning the bubbles of, okay, family, obviously, if you're comfortable with it, family is going to be a lot closer in your bubble than, say, the stranger that delivers the mail. Yeah, you know him as the mailman, but you don't know, I don't know my mailman's name. I know his face. I wave, you know, say hi if we happen to be crossing paths, kind of a thing when he's delivering and I'm coming home or leaving or whatever. But that's as close as we ever get. It'd be weird if our personal bubbles got any closer than that.
So just checking on safety and how comfortable they are with other people. That's what you.
Yep, and so yeah, I mean overall theme of it, yeah, because there's also the coping and everything else too. With adults, it looks different though, and that's what are the different walls that you have up. What walls can we break down and bring in closer to you that don't have to be out so far? Do you really need all these walls up with these people that you work with that you never talk to? Maybe they're in a different department than you or whatever, but you never talk to them. Do you really need to have walls up? Not really. You know, learning how to take those ones down first because those are safer than the walls that you have up for those closer to you. And learning to trust yourself the entire process. Pardon?
One of the first things that I go to is wanting to find out family dynamics that they've been experienced. How was your parents' relationship? You know, did you grow up with your father? What did you see? How did you see it played out as a child? I will ask about sexual abuse. I will ask about, you know, when did they start liking boys or girls? You know, kind of get an idea as to how they started forming beliefs about or surrounding relationships. You know, was there an incident where you were shamed because of your sexuality? So tapping into those different aspects, but I definitely go as far back as I possibly can, because I do believe that a lot of these things are learned from families, from society, and then just trying to take it from there. If there is sexual abuse, I also kind of try and focus on the power of that sexual abuse, where it came from. For example, I am working with a family where the perpetrator of this child wasn't very aggressive, but showed anger that resembled the child's father's anger. So if the child was fearful of the father's response and didn't want to get the father upset, and here comes a perpetrator that resembles that child, and it wasn't a healthy response. It was like, you know, I can't be myself around my dad. And he gets angry, and I don't want to make him angry, and I don't have a tight connection with my father because he's outside of the home. So guess what? You get a perpetrator that resembles that battle that child has been experiencing, and they succumb to it. So looking at these dynamics, looking at the relationships with the key people in their lives is where I start.
Love that. I would say I'm probably similar in the sense of, for me, it's looking at where were those young parts shut down, right? Where did they learn that I am bad, or what I possess here is bad, right? Like my body is bad, my sex is bad, my fill in the blank is bad. And then working to empower that part. And this is where I think I tap into your stuff, Alex, of like, how do we empower that individual to love and own themselves, their body, their sexuality, their faithfulness, choose what it is? How do we let them own it? Because if I own this, ain't nobody else going to take power over this, right? And so it's teaching them to own their self so they can set those boundaries like you're talking about, Alex, I think is kind of where I go. And sometimes I'll start, we'll just jump right into, hey, tell me about your childhood. Tell me about what sex was like, or what it was talked about, or how it was talked about, or sexuality even, not even just sex. For a lot of guys, I shouldn't say a lot of guys. For a lot of guys and women who come in for pornography use, it'll be tell me what gets you going, right? What is, when you sit down to look it up, what do you look up? And when you're looking that up, what do you feel, right? Does it feel the sense of connection? Is it adventure? Is it exploration? Is it freedom? Is it fill in? And we'll search for, this is the sensation that I have, and then we'll work on that piece. How else can we meet that need? So that's kind of how I go about it. Kind of off of that, in a practical piece of, I want to know, what can parents do to help their children create that life for them? But before we get to that, what can listeners start to do on their own to start kind of building this awareness, this development, these boundaries, that type of thing?
I think what's very important, especially with sexuality and your own person, is just understanding and knowing what you want, exploring who you are, what you want sexually, and also being careful about the connections that makes. Again, here I'm going to go a little bit more into some of the energy psychology that all three of us have been, kind of looking into recently. And, you have to admit that energy is real in our lives. Energy is real in our bodies. And be very careful as to who you share that energy with. I mean, there is a connection there. There's a spiritual connection, whether we want to believe it or not. And just knowing, what do you want? You have to go into a sexual agreement with your eyes open. Am I, pursuing this person because I'm going to give them sex because I want a relationship and that's the way I can convince them? Or am I doing this because, you know what, I just need to get it on, and just knowing that that's what it is, and you move on. Being aware of your needs at that time is very important, so that you know that you can control what's happening. Unfortunately, when we start having sexual encounters with people, sometimes it gets out of control. So just knowing yourself, knowing what you want, open communication with your partner, and making sure that you're getting into a situation that you can handle. I mean, that's some of the things that come to mind.
I love that. Alex, I want you to talk first, but I just thought of the connection between what you said originally with like the boundary setting. You're like, hey, who is safe? Who do I allow to be in that bubble? And that connection of doing cutoffs and energy work, or what's the language?
Cord cutting.
Cord cutting, right? Yeah. Like, nope, you're not allowed in that circle, type of thing. Like, super cool. Okay, sorry, Alex, go for it. What can listeners start to do on their own to kind of work towards what we're talking about?
A lot. I don't know where to start with that. I guess the first being making sure that you have healthy coping mechanisms. So deep breathing, being connected with your body, and knowing how to listen to it and responding in kind, because that's really the start of learning how to trust yourself. Is, okay, I'm starting to feel stressed. I know I need to back off from what I'm doing. I need to take some deep breaths, maybe read for a bit, write, whatever it is that helps you relax your body, and then come back to it. And know it, repetitively doing that and teaching yourself, one, it's desensitizing to that, whatever that is. But then it's also, I got my back. And building that trust with yourself again. Because then from there, it's doing that with others, of, okay, something doesn't feel right with this interaction. I'm going to pull back a bit. And that's healthy. That's good. And that's, with a lot of people, I'll call it just vibes. They seem to understand that better than just the energy another person gives off. So if you feel like in a conversation you're getting some bad vibes, okay, back off. It's okay to keep those walls up. If you're not getting any bad vibes, maybe take a couple bricks off your wall, lower it down a little bit, see what happens. If you feel more comfortable with one family member than another family member, experiment, especially with them, if your family is a safe family, but that's only if your family is a safe family that you can do those experiments with. Please don't do it if it's not a safe person.
Yeah, well, and I love that you said that, though, because I think a messaging that a lot of folks have gotten is that, okay, they're your family. You need to trust them. They're safe. right? And that's not true,
You're right.
right?
No.
Right? Like, we get to choose the people, even if they're family, they don't have to be in that circle.
No.
Yeah.
Right? We
I
trust
love my family
who allows
dearly,
us to be authentically ourselves.
Yeah, I love my family dearly, but each person has their own place in my circle.
Yes.
And
that's,
we all know that research has proven that child predators or people who prey on children are very close to the family, are people that you trust.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, I would echo both of your guys' things. Love, Alex, the language around just the self, right? Breathing. It's the step as simple as breathing, noticing when your lungs go in and out, what feels good, what doesn't feel good. The thing I would add is just start to notice when you start to feel like crap, okay? When you start to feel numb, when you start to feel shut off, when you start to feel that you're hiding aspects of yourself. I'm sorry, but if we're around mom and dad and we can't be authentically ourselves, there's something wrong with that, right? So how do we start to challenge that? And does that mean that we need to keep that brick wall a little higher with them? And that's okay. So just start to notice, I think, what feels good, what doesn't feel good. If you're someone that feels okay masturbating, what feels good to you, right? Like, try different things out. Don't feel scared to try and explore and experiment. Okay. So kind of moving on from that, what can parents do to help build a healthy self in their children?
Honesty. 100% honesty. No shame.
And not freaking out. Not freaking out. I know it's hard not to as a parent. It is hard not to. It is totally hard not to. But not freaking out when even if they swear, my kids, Mama, can I say hell? I was like, I don't care. Use it properly. And she'll come up to me because she's learning some of these words at daycare, some of it at school, whatever. Some of it she just hears us say. And our parenting philosophy has been, don't give it a lot of attention if it's if you don't want them to do something. So putting safety aside. Okay. Only exception if you interfere is if safety. Flipping across the couch, I'm going to go take you off my couch. Not okay. You scream at each other and yelling at each other. I'm going to say, hey, you guys need to stop this. But I know you're not going to listen to me. So kind of got to let it be. But not making it a big deal. Because once you make it a big deal, their kid is going to be like, why? Let's poke at this a little bit, to the point where then your response completely shuts the kid down.
Give an example, Alex. When you're saying not making a big deal about what when it comes to kids?
Yeah. Okay. So I like swearing because it's a safe example. The example I don't. The example I don't like, because it's hard as a parent to even talk about, but I do anyway, which just makes it harder. Is, hey mom, so-and-so touched my butt. And that's hard, hearing that as a parent and be like, excuse me? First of all, it's like, okay, what do you mean? Because we're still trying to get the language thing figured out and who has what body parts where. But that's an important part of it, is your butt is your butt. Your vagina is your vagina. Your penis is your penis. Given any sort of speech impediments, my kids can't say penis for some reason, so it's peener.
Yes.
Close enough. It's but it's a speech impediment. It's gonna go away. But naming it for what it is. And so when your kid comes up and says, hey, so-and-so touched my butt, and automatically, okay, we're still learning body parts. Can you point to what you mean? And great. So, child will, and not freaking out, staying calm, parents, staying calm, saying, okay, then what?
Yep.
And not making it seem like you're attacking them of why did this, what, avoid the why questions, avoid the why.
Get them into
what?
like the narrative thing. Like tell me the narrative around whatever the story.
Yes. Okay. Then what happened? How did you feel? Who was around? Did you talk with the teacher or the sitter or daycare lady? Whoever the adult is in that setting, and calmly learning and talking about it in that way, and then helping the child take care of it.
Yep.
And okay, emotions, take care of your emotions first. Okay.
I was just going to say, like, did that feel good? How did you feel when that happened? Yeah.
Yep. So take care of the emotions first. You didn't like it? Okay. You don't like something. Tell them no. Push them, hit them, kick them, whatever. Get them to leave you alone.
Yep.
Because they obviously did not listen to the no the first time.
When kids
and then
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Pardon?
When kids
I was going to say, and then
it's such an exciting topic, I know.
Okay, 2 seconds, and then you, Sonia. Okay, but then, once you're away from the person, go tell the adult.
Okay.
And that way then, because it
are exposed to inappropriate sexual content, and they come to you with it. Okay, they walk in on mom and dad having sex. They see porn because someone else is watching it. They see something on TV, and they've never seen someone have sex. How do you handle it then?
My answer to that would be we talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
If you as the parent are uncomfortable with it, they will become uncomfortable with it. Okay? Mm-hmm. If you can't say, hey, this is your penis or this is your vagina, or hey, let's clean your vagina today. Like, if you can't talk about it openly, they're not going to talk about it openly. They will pick up what you're putting down. Okay? So if they walk in on mom and dad having sex, let's talk about that. And again, we do it in age appropriate ways. We're not saying, oh, this is what it is. Daddy puts his vagina in no, that's not what it
is. So graphic.
We don't get so explicit, right? Like, we can say, hey, mommy and daddy really, really love each other, and they choose to have this as part of their relationship, right? And it's something so cool, right? Like, we get to talk about it, and we get to talk about it in a way that honors everyone and the body, because kids are curious. Like, oh, were you wrestling
and they're smart. Kids are smarter than you think they are, which is hilarious.
Yes.
They are so much smarter than us, and I find it so hilarious and awesome.
Yes. Yeah. One of my favorite things.
Denying it or trying to say, oh no, we're watching the news. Kids will get it.
Because now we just told them, oh, when you're uncomfortable, you can lie. Is that what you want to teach your kid? If that's what you want to teach them, great.
Good point. Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And so being honest and saying, and like, one of the things I say for kiddos, like, early on is, let's name it head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Head, shoulders, knees, and penis, like, right? Like, it's just a normal body part.
I love
right?
it.
We have to first teach that, right?
And teaching, and to the whole potty language thing. For a while, my kids were on this kick of no potty language, and I was like, what's potty language? I'm sitting here thinking, swear words. No, pee, poop, butt, vagina, penis. And I was like, no. You got to say all that stuff.
Yes.
Because you pee in your diaper. How am I going to know that you peed unless you come up and say, Mama, I peed?
Yes.
Like, I'm honestly not chasing my kid around every 5 minutes checking their diaper.
Yeah.
That's a bit ridiculous. And so I'm not going to know unless you tell me, hey, my butt hurts. Oh, okay. Did you fall? Like, what's going on? You gotta be able to tell me.
Yeah, we can't expect it to be uncomfortable. Like, if we can't talk about it in normal conversation and make it comfortable, then how the heck is your child supposed to come to you if something does happen?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because that's where the shame starts.
Yep.
And so, or that's a part of the shame. That's not where it starts. So I think become comfortable with it. One of my favorite pieces of literature was by Dan Siegel, and it's Parenting from the Inside Out, right? And it's this whole idea is, as parents, if we want to parent in a certain way, then we need to become that, right? Like, we need to figure out where in me is uncomfortable with sex in order for me to talk about it with my child, right? If I want my child to know all the pros and all the cons of sex and all of that, then I need to be comfortable with it myself. Because kids see when we're being two-faced.
Well, and that, I think that extends to more than just sex, though, too.
Oh, preach. Yeah.
Because not everything that we watch on TV is sex. A lot of the movies that my husband and I watch are John Wick and other very violent stuff. And a kid wakes up because of TV's too loud, bad dream, whatever. And they're just like, what's going on? Why is that person shooting the other person? And you're just like, oh, okay, well, how do I make this child appropriate? And not because that guy killed the guy's dog. And so it's figuring it out, but it's being open even about that stuff. Because even if if you lie about that stuff, they're going to be like, okay, this is something minor. Violence is something minor compared to talking about sex, I'd say, for most parents.
Yes.
In the uncomfortableness scale. And so even with that minor stuff, like you're saying, Nico, talk about it.
Yeah.
Be open with it. Get appropriate.
Yep. Mm-hmm. We are all 100% always modeling for our kids. Like for me, but my daughter's obviously too small to know this logically at this point, right? But when I had this week on Wednesday, I had a super hard day at work and I was exhausted and I was short with my wife after work, right? Like I just modeled something, right? And so is it then my job to tell my daughter when she has a hard day that she can't be short? No. If I want her to know that, then I need to start doing that and modeling that, right? And so make it about you and say, okay, am I doing that myself? Am I comfortable telling someone when someone has come into my boundary circle and it doesn't feel safe? If not, then I have some work to do. One of my favorite things as a therapist is meeting with parents and getting to integrate their values and their beliefs and educational communication, right? Like how do we educate and talk with your child about something, still holding your values and educating so that your child can have a healthy lifestyle.
And apologizing to the kid too when you make a mistake. I mean, that doesn't seem like it's a huge thing, but even to the little kids, it's huge when you're just like, hey, you know what? I just yelled at you. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have yelled at you. I'm really frustrated. I'm really tired. You know, you're whatever. And I shouldn't have yelled at you. That was not okay. I need to work on that and work on it, you know, because they're going to see you putting in that effort. Yeah.
If you guys had to leave one word or one sentence for our listeners at the end of this conversation about trauma, sex, and the body, what would it be? Sonia, let's start with you.
No shame.
Beautiful. Okay. Alex?
No, you, Nico. I got to think.
Mine would be, you get to be selfish and love yourself. I'm going to take that back. People see it as selfish. I don't believe it is. You get to love yourself.
But you're conditioned to call it selfish.
Exactly.
You're conditioned to call it selfish.
So let's challenge that. So love yourself any which way you can. And find people who will help you love yourself. Because it's not selfish.
I'm seem to be on a thing of truth. So because that's what pops into my head after I take a minute to think, and it's know your truth, be comfortable with your truth, and you know, be your true self.
I love that. So be honest, love yourself, know yourself,
trust yourself.
So with that, we just want to thank everyone for listening to Your Therapist Said What? Please feel free to reach out with comments, questions, concerns. This is not stuff that we are shy about talking around. So feel free to reach out if you have any thoughts or questions. And let us know your feedback. This was a super raw one. We didn't really prep for it. It was just kind of, hey, this is a topic we want to do. So let us know what your thoughts are. With that being said, have a great day and go love yourself.
Bye, guys.